Hello, my name's Alex Witney and this is Conspiracy 101, and today we're going to be looking into the AZTEC UFO crash or hoax. Now this is a really interesting one, and I wasn't planning on covering this in this week's episode. We're going to start, as we always do, with incognito mode and, of course, Wikipedia. So, for Wikipedia, clearly states hoax. But as you can probably tell from this, Conspiracy 101, as we venture into various conspiracies, the fact it has been labelled as a hoax is somewhat suspicious. If I may, put on my tinfoil hat just for a moment. It's a bit dodgy, isn't it? Why AZTEC, New Mexico? Why not Roswell? You haven't talked about Roswell yet. I was going to be talking about greys. We did an episode where we detailed all the different types of aliens, or at least, the famous ones. And greys are famous. And as I was doing research into them and trying to find more information about their origins, whether fact or fiction, one of the things that came up was the AZTEC, New Mexico UFO hoax. It happened before Roswell, but I was not familiar with it. It's not something that is massively well known, at least. And I'm someone who considers myself relatively up there when it comes to conspiracies and these kind of adventures. So, as we go into it, we'll have a look at the ins and outs of it. And there are quite a few articles, actually. It's not just going to be Wikipedia today. And there are some pictures that are very interesting and also slightly weird. One thing I did not actually check, which I'm going to do right now. And we haven't, season 2, we haven't actually looked at our top secret, the Mammoth Book of Cover-Ups. Alien abduction is in there, but does it have a little glossary of that? No. Something Malcolm X. Right, alien abduction is there. Introduction. Do we have AZTEC? Now this is the place, it's not the civilization. Alien abduction. Roswell is obviously in here. And as we get to Roswell, maybe I'll read that, but I don't think abduction is going to have anything. Okay. Well, that was fun, wasn't it? What a nice little adventure. Anyway, let's begin. Let's zoom in so people can read along if they want to. The AZTEC, New Mexico UFO, sometimes known as Other Roswell, was a flying saucer crash alleged to have happened in 1948 in AZTEC, New Mexico. The story was first published in 1949 by author Frank Scully in his Variety magazine columns, and later in his 1950 book, Behind the Flying Saucers. In the mid-1950s, the story was exposed as a hoax fabricated by two confidence men, Silas M. Newton and Leo A. Gabor, as part of a fraudulent scheme to sell supposed alien technology. Suspicious. Beginning in the 1970s, some ufologists resurrected the story in books claiming that the purported crash was real. In 2013, an FBI memo claimed by some ufologists to substantiate the crash story was dismissed by the Bureau as a second or third-hand claim that we never investigated. Suspicious. This is the memo. There is an actual FBI website link discussing it. Suspicious. Oh, my earpiece is annoying. I'm just going to take it out. Unrelated to the FBI. Story. So let's talk about this. This is a very small Wikipedia, so we'll go through it in its entirety, and then we'll look at the different articles and people talking about it. According to Scully, in March 1948, an unidentified aerial craft containing 16 humanoid bodies was recovered by the military in New Mexico after making a controlled landing in Hart Canyon, 12 miles northeast of the city of AZTEC. The craft was said to be 99 feet, 30 meters, in diameter. The largest UFO to date. Scully named as his sources two men identified as Newton and Gabor, who purportedly told him the incident had been covered up and the military had taken the craft for secret research. Scully wrote that the crashed UFO, along with other flying saucers captured by the government, came from Venus and worked on magnetic principles. According to Scully, the inhabitants stocked concentrated food wafers and heavy water for drinking purposes, and every dimension of the craft was divisible by 9. Okay? Science, right, everything's divisible by 9 if you try hard enough. Science writer Martin Gardner criticized Scully's story as full of wild imaginings and scientific howlers. Hoax. Settle down, Wikipedia. During the late 1940s and early 1950s, Silas Newton and Leo A. Gabbar travelled through AZTEC, attempting to sell devices known in the oil business as doodlebugs. Is that dowsing? That sounds like dowsing. They claimed that these devices could find oil, gas, and gold, and that they could do so because they were based on alien technology, recovered from a supposed crash of the flying saucer. This is a long con. Well, I guess if they were... Oh, maybe it's not that long. When J.P. Kahn of the San Francisco Chronicle asked the con men for a piece of metal from the supposed alien devices, they provided him with a sample that turned out to be ordinary aluminium. In that, does it spell it like the English? Oh my god. Oh, Jesus Christ, Wikipedia. Aluminium. So the actual proper one is the way English people pronounce it. In 1949, author Frank Scully published a series of columns in the Variety magazine retelling the crash story told to him by Newton and Gabbar. He later expanded these columns to create Behind the Flying Saucers, a best-selling author Graham Hancock, that influenced public perceptions about UFOs. 4 years later, the hoax was exposed in True magazine. After the article was published, many victims of the pair came forward. One of the victims was the millionaire Herman Flada, who pressed charges. The 2 men were convicted of fraud in 1953. So this supposedly happened in 48, first published in 49. The fraudsters were convicted in 1953. Ufologists. Through the mid-1950s to the early 1970s, most ufologists considered the subject thoroughly discredited and therefore avoided it. However, in the late 70s, author Leonard Stringfeld purported that not only was the incident real, but the craft involved was one of the many captured and stored by the US military. In later years, many alleged first-hand accounts of the Roswell crash contained the AZTEC crash story, with some claiming the craft was made of a material impervious to all heat. Maybe it was asbestos. While others claiming the craft was damaged by the crash, the supposed humanoid bodies were said to be measured between 36 inches and 42 inches, 91 centimeters, and 110 centimeters respectively, in height and weighing around 40 pounds, 18 kilograms. Ufologists claim that shortly after the craft was downed, the military cleared the area of evidence, including the bodies, subsequently taking it to Hangar 18 at the Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. FBI memo. This is where it gets interesting. In April 2011, UFO enthusiasts discovered that what has become known as the Hotel Memo, which was available for viewing on the FBI's Vault website. Though the memo has never been classified and had been making the rounds online for some years, it was seen as proof of an official cover-up by the US government. The memo contained the report of a man named Guy Hotel, who was the FBI agent in charge of the Washington field office at the time. Maybe in the X-Files. Ooh. It was addressed to J. Edgar Hoover and indexed in the FBI records, but this was standard practice at the time. It was later discovered that Hotel Story was retelling of a January 6, 1950 article published by the Wyandotte Echo, a Kansas City, Kansas legal newspaper. The Wyandotte Echo article itself was a retelling of the account of a local car salesman and a radio station advertising manager. Ultimately, the details within the FBI memo can be traced directly back to the initial hoax story. After the memo was posted on the FBI website, it received over 1 million views within 2 years. In 2013, the FBI issued a press release concerning the memo. In addressing the memo's context and possibly connection to a hoax, the Bureau wrote, "Finally, the hotel memo does not prove the existence of UFOs. It is simply a second or third-hand claim that we never investigated. Some people believe the memo repeats a hoax that was circulating at the time, but the Bureau's files have no information to verify that theory." Sure they don't. Fundraiser. The incident gave birth to the AZTEC UFO Symposium, which was run by AZTEC New Mexico Library as a fundraiser from 1997 to 2011. That's nice. Isn't that nice? That's nice. Interesting. Definitely not as much published about it in comparison to Roswell, but similar origins-ish, kind of. So instead of it being maybe, and this is all, supposed and allegedly, instead of it being a something that was misidentified, as in Roswell, this was more of a, con men hoax situation. Or so we are told. Right. I do not have my pause button. No, I don't. Okay. Right. I need to figure out which one's which now. Okay. Here we go. Is this it? News. FBI.gov. Yes, this is it. So this is the actual FBI.gov website. This is the memo, I believe. I think that's as much as it has. A single page of March 22, 1950 by Guy Hotel. That's a very strange name, isn't it? Let's read it and then see if we can actually read the memo. It seems quite hard to read, but we'll try. I'll try. It's the most popular file in the FBI vault. Our high-tech electronic reading room housing various Bureau records released under the Freedom of Information Act. Over the past 2 years, the file has been viewed nearly 1 million times, yet it is only a single page, relaying an unconfirmed report that the FBI never even followed up on. Suspicious. The file in question is a memo dated March 22nd, 1950. 63 years ago last week. That's a bit wrong. It was authored by Guy Hotel, the head of our field office in Washington, D.C. Oh, he's got a brief biography of this supposed hotel. Like all memos to the FBI headquarters at the time, it was addressed to Director J. Edgar Hoover and recorded and indexed in FBI records. That's very, dictatorial. The subject of the memo was anything but ordinary. It related a story told to one of our agents by a third party who has said an Air Force investigator had reported that 3 flying saucers were recovered in New Mexico. The memo provided the following detail. The saucers, were described as being circular in shape with raised centers, approximately 50 feet in diameter. That's half the size. Wait, diameter. Yeah, okay, that kind of works. Each one was occupied by 3 bodies of human shape, but only 3 feet tall, dressed in metallic cloth of very fine texture. Each body was bandaged in a manner similar to the blackout suits used by speed flyers and test pilots. After relaying the informant's claim that the sources had been found because the government's high-powered radar in the area had interfered with the controlling mechanism of the sources, the memo ends simply by saying that no further evaluation was attempted concerning the matter by the FBI agent. Mr. Hotel. Biography. Guy L. Hotel was born around 1902. He was a graduate of George Washington University in Washington, D.C., where he was a star football player. I think all FBI agents have to be a star football player at some point. He was later inducted into the university's Athletic Hall of Fame. He entered the FBI as a special agent in 1934. In December 1936, he was named acting head of the FBI's Washington field office. He was appointed special agent in charge the following May and served until March 1941. Hotel was reappointed special agent in charge in February 1943 and served until 1951. When he took a position in the Identification Division, he retired in 1955. Hotel was married 3 times and had 2 sons following his FBI career. Hotel served as an executive secretary of the Horsemen's Benevolent Association. He died in June 1990. Horsemen's Benevolent Association. That might have been the end of this particular story. Just another information dead end in the FBI files. But when we launched the vault in April 2011, some media outlets noticed the hotel memo and erroneously reported that the FBI had posted proof of an UFO crash at Roswell, New Mexico, and the recovery of wreckage of and alien corpses. The resulting stories went viral, and traffic to the new vault soared. So what's the real story? A few facts to keep in mind. First, the hotel memo isn't new. It was first released publicly in the late 70s and has been posted in the FBI website for several years prior to the launch of the vault. Second, the hotel memo is dated nearly 3 years after the infamous events in Roswell in July 1947. There is no reason to believe that the two are connected. An FBI file on Roswell, another popular page, we'll save that one for later, is posted elsewhere on the vault. Third, as noted in an earlier story, FBI has only occasionally been involved in investigating reports of UFOs and extraterrestrials. For a few years after the Roswell incident, Director Hoover did order his agents, at the request of the Air Force, to verify any UFO sightings. That practice ended in July 1950. Sure it did. 4 months after the hotel memo, suggesting that our Washington field office didn't think enough of the flying saucer story to look into it. Finally, the hotel memo does not prove the existence of UFOs. It is simply a second or third-hand claim that we never investigated. Some people believe the memo repeats a hoax that was circulating at the time, but the Bureau's files have no information to verify that theory. Sorry, no smoking gun on UFOs. The mystery remains. Yeah, whatever. Right, let's actually go on the vault and look at it. Disclaimer. Leave me alone, disclaimer. Subject. Oh, wow, there's not a lot, is that? Right, can I zoom in? Did I say open another page? No. I said zoom in. There we go. Is that zooming in at all? It's kind of zooming in. Oh, my God. FBI, come on, sort your website out. Okay, so Office Memorandum, United States Government, blah, 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 blah. Very normal. Let's try and center it slightly. March 22nd, 1950, from a guy called Guy Hotel. The following information was furnished to SA by information omitted. Interesting. An investigator for the Air Force stated that 3 so-called flying saucers had been recovered in New Mexico. They were described as being circular in shape with raised centers, approximately 50 feet in diameter. Each one was occupied by 3 bodies, approximately of human shape, but only 3 feet tall, dressed in metallic cloth of very fine texture. Each body was bandaged in a manner similar to the blackout suits used by, that's a weird word to use, bandaged, used by speed flyers and test pilots. According to Mr. Information Redacted, informant, the saucers were found in New Mexico due to the fact that the government has a very high-powered radar setup in that area, and it is believed that the radar interference with the controlling mechanisms of the saucers. No further evaluation was attempted by S.A. Blank concerning the above. Or was it? Well, we don't really know. That's one of those things, isn't it? Right. Let's get rid of a few of these pages and have a look at some of the articles concerning it. So this is the Albuquerque Journal. This was posted in 2020. The truth is out there. AZTEC is home to another purported alien crash landing site within New Mexico. And this is beautiful. On the actual site, someone's made a little alien face. Isn't that nice? An alien head rock formation marks the alleged spot of the AZTEC UFO crash. AZTEC, New Mexico, with a population of about 6,500, is a tidy community a few miles east of Farmington. The nearby AZTEC Ruins National Monument stands monumentally still. The AZTEC Museum and Pioneer Village features such century-ago items as a historic barbershop, antique telephone equipment, various fossils, and minerals. Something else, something much darker, draws tourists here. On the night of March 25th, 1948, a flyer saucer allegedly landed on a lonely mesa in the Hart Canyon 4 miles distant. There's a plaque where it put down. Folks as far away as those who lived in Cedar Hill 10 miles northeast of Aztec were said to have heard the crash, but the fact was never verified. We'll open that in a new tab and see if we can zoom in and actually read it. In Farmington, hundreds reported the incident to the Farmington Daily Times. State policemen debunked by saying the flying saucer was fluff from cottonwood trees. That's an interesting one I haven't heard. The Aztec tale was suddenly full of holes and hoaxes. Here's what came later. 2 men convinced Aztec residents that saucer had definitely dropped in. That was a fraud, of course. Nonetheless, Aztec swiftly became a favoured spot for skywatchers and believers from every which way. A year later in Roswell, in July 1947... Oh, no, a year earlier in Roswell. Oh, I was wrong. This was not before Roswell. This was after. That's very interesting. That kind of changes things a little bit. That makes... Yeah, that makes the idea of someone trying to hoax something in order to sell things a little bit more believable, doesn't it? A year earlier in Roswell, in July 1947, the balloon fell smacked into the ground on a nearby ranch. Immediately, conspiracy theories, took hold, as were extraterrestrials. As the years went by, Roswell became the king of all those who peered at the heavens thinking they had seen something important. A 1996 UFO festival brought Roswell mobs of visitors. A museum and research centre dominated Roswell's main high street. UFOlogy turned into a serious subject. Books on the topic suddenly popped up everywhere. Meanwhile, Little Aztec became just a footnote. Lovely signs. So you've got the Alien Trail and the Outer Limits Trail. And yet, supposedly, 12 giant humanoids. How are they giants now? They were little people, weren't they? 3 feet tall. Were aboard that UFO. Perhaps 18, maybe 30, maybe 400. The saucer itself was said to be an incredible 100 feet in diameter. I'd say that's doubled now. It was 50 in diameter, wasn't it? And now it's doubled. Members of the armed forces were ordered to store various pieces of debris and send them to such locales as Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Dayton, Ohio, never to be seen again. Frank Fea, an emeritus professor at New Mexico State University, traveled to Aztec to see what the hubbub was all about. The military must have used the biggest Beckins truck available to cut away all that stuff, he told me. Beginning in 1997, a UFO symposium was held in Aztec. That conference lasted until 2011. Papers were submitted on such subjects as alien abductions, cattle mutilations, and government cover-ups, all of which we will cover at some point on Conspiracy 101. Meanwhile, Roswell was experiencing an economic boom. Thus, Aztec became thought of as Roswell's little brother. How does one find the Aztec site? The visitor center in Aztec is currently closed due to COVID. Over the phone, I talked to Willan Thomas, that's a cool name, who ran the center. I asked her, oh, it's a her, sorry. I just presumed Willan was a boy's name. I was wrong. I asked her what she believed. Her answer: all those researchers who were here, they're all graveyard dead now. Interesting comeback. Seth Finch, a Presbyterian minister in Albuquerque, grew up in Aztec. He and some college friends took a road trip to where Seth was certain the site was located. It was getting late, so I don't know if we were near the actual site. It's a wild place. There's no signage at all. We went mountain biking instead. I don't know if that's a perfect Aztec accent, but it's certainly an Albuquerque one. In mid-October, my wife, all right, humble brag, we're all married, mate, get over it, and I met up with another couple from Albuquerque, hello, and drove along a gritty gravel road in Aztec for 6.5 miles. Not a single building could be seen, save for oil and gas operations. I waved to the driver of a pickup truck to stop. Do you know where the UFO trail is? I asked. He shook his head and said, I've been living here 7 years and don't know what you're talking about. I thanked him, and onward we went. We hiked up past fallen cedar branches and down the rocky paths. After 4 hours of looking, we came to a clearing. there stood the celebrated plaque that had been installed in 2007. It is certainly not a wall plaque. Rather, it appeared to be a lectern, the sort you might see in a college classroom. A few feet away lay a curious circle of rocks. Were those rocks put there by aliens? I wondered. Nah, probably not. I like his sense of humour. That's very me, that is. Right, we'll have a look at that in a second, but I want to know who wrote this. Toby Smith. Thank you, Toby. That was very good. Right, let's see if we can zoom in. The recovery at Hart Canyon. On or about this site. On March 25th, 1948, a spacecraft of origins unknown crashed or landed on this messer. It is alleged that the Los Alamos radar station in nearby El Vado, New Mexico, tracked the errant landing to the site. A high-security recovery operation led by the Air Force and 5th Army Division was responsible for the removal of this craft. The recovery operation took approximately 2 weeks, with all the remains being taken to Los Alamos, the laboratory for scientific study and evaluation by some of the world's leading scientists. Later, it was rumoured to have been taken to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Dayton, Ohio. The recovery of this craft by the US government and military was one of the most secretive recoveries of a spacecraft with origins unknown since the similar recoveries in Roswell, New Mexico 8 months earlier. The spacecraft was approximately 100 feet in diameter and 18 feet tall. It was one of the most intact crafts that the government has recovered at that time. Sadly, all occupants, as many as 16, died as a result of this crash, making the full disclosure of both purpose and origin all but impossible. This plaque has been placed here to bring awareness to an event that has been kept secret for 59 years and is a significant part of our national history. Scott and Suzanne Ramsey, March 25th, 2007. Thank you very much, Scott and Suzanne Ramsey. That's a really nice plaque. God knows what's going on with this. Is this meant to be here? Has that happened? Did nature do this? Was this the coronavirus? Or was it it kind of looks like glue, doesn't it? It looks like they've repurposed it. It was something else, and they've sort of just scratched shit out of that. Right. Okay. Let me just have a look at... So we have some stuff. Right, we've read the Wikipedia. Let's move on to the Skeptics Dictionary. This was a link at the bottom of the Wikipedia page. Always good to check. Some of the websites usually don't work, but some of them do. Skeptics Dictionary is a very interesting website and very one-sided, but it usually details information quite well. We've read a lot of this information, so I'm not going to repeat it, but we'll just go over it briefly. Hart Canyon, 12 miles north of AZTEC, 16 humanoids, again, repeating that information. 99.99 has to be divisible by 9. 100 feet diameter, etc., etc. No witnesses. Newton and Bauer were involved in oil exploration finance schemes. That's an interesting way to play it, isn't it? Me? No, I'm not a fraudster. I'm an oil exploration finance schemer. The hoax was perpetrated to get investors, building machines, office information, and recovery of special metals, which is something that is, that's something that's always and will always surround these kind of investigations, won't it? Something's crashed, and the reason the government kind of hides it is not necessarily because of the aliens, but because of the technology they can glean from it. Or, if you're going for more of a skeptic's view, it was already something the government was working on, and they didn't want the public or outsiders from the country knowing that they had that kind of technology. Whoa! Okay, this is cool. Okay, so one of their victims was the millionaire. We heard about that. They had charged $18,500 for a tuner, which could be bought at a surplus store for $3.50 at the time. Now, that's a markup. Oh, In modern money, that's got to be pushing 50 grand, isn't it? You can put it into the things. I'm not going to. The Aztec story was revived in 1986 by William Steinman and Wendell Stevens in their privately published book called UFO. That's a nice way of putting it. Privately published, not self-published. Privately published. UFO crash at AZTEC. Ride again in 1998, and then it kind of snowballs, doesn't it? So lots of people kind of read it. Citizens of AZTEC have seen how Roswell turned out, and they wanted a bit of that cherry pie, so they took it. So we've got two more to look at. That is the one I want to look. This is so this is a really weird one. Right, we do the second because this is the one that has the picture, and I want to do that last. So, the Frank Scully crashed saucer at AZTEC hoax 1950. This is debunker.com, and this is Robert Schiffer. This is his book, Frank Scully, that he wrote about it, and he seems to be, so far, not a fraudster or a hoaxer, but an innocent bystander who just happened to make money from selling his book. In 1950, this page is not optimized. It's bad. In 19, look at it. Oh boy, I have to zoom right out just to get it. I'm just gonna zoom in and then scroll. It won't even let me scroll. Oh wow, it's bad. This is bad website design. It's bad website design. Usually, I'm all for the ones that kind of look like they're from 1996. Not so much at the moment. In 1950, Frank Scully's book Behind the Flying Saucer was published. It was the first to claim that the saucer had been recovered by US government. It's really interesting. You can read it here as an ebook for free. And yeah, you can download it and it's there. If you want to read it, you can. Which is awesome. From my book, UFO Sightings. Of course he's got something to sell. How do you think he pays for this website? Okay. Can he do it? I have to zoom out in order to read it. But let's just read half of it. But you know, we just won't get the tail end of sentences. The crash saucer stories began to circulate in 1950, etc., etc. Sources use magnetic propulsion, derived the energy from following magnetic lines of force. That's a thing that's put forward quite a few times. The bodies of the craft's occupants looking very much. Okay. When was this written, Mr. UFO site? When was this? When was this written? I'm hoping it was in the 60s. I will read this as a quotation. The bodies of the craft's occupant, looking very much like earthly midgets, were said to have been dressed in 1890 style clothing. Okay, and then it reiterates the same kind of thing. I got this clip in right from J.P. Kahn. I don't know its origin. Scully was a devout Catholic, again the person who wrote the book, and came out with the information. Paul Gimbel gives us a very interesting, insightful look at Scully's career and reputation. Again, a link I'm not going to click. Browse the official government records containing the FBI's investigation into their fraudulent activities. That's very interesting. Not going to click on it. He was a con man, used a gadget. Yeah. For a Catholic's child, Christmas. Blessed Mother Goose. Favourite nursery rhymes debrutalized by Frank Scully to echo the Catholic way of life. Charmingly illustrated. Send $2. Sorry. $2.25 for each postpaid copy to Greenberg. Debrutalized. I think most of the nursery rhymes, at least that we tell now, have their basis in some kind of Christianity, don't they? So, newspaperman J.P. Kahn, who is on the left there, I believe, unravels the Scully Newton-Galba hoax. J.P. Kahn left with Robert Schiffer, 1984. Who was Schiffer? No, it was Newton and Galba, wasn't it? Who are you, Schiffer? Kahn's original article in the True magazine, September 1952, Flying Saucers and the Mysterious Little Men. You can read this as well, which is very interesting. Flying Saucers and a Mysterious Little Man by J.P. Khan. It's really cool. And it goes into the information basically about it. There's Mr. Galba with his fancy whatever gimmick. Switch trick disc at left, 5 cents a piece. The unknown metal. Flying Saucers and the True. Sounds like a great band. For the author, Silas Newton drew dimensional sketch of the first saucer that landed on the diagram. System of 9s. Has to be divisible by 9, otherwise it will not work. Wow, look how long this article is. This is when they did article. Let's ask anyway, just in case. I get it. Wow. May I be excused? That's violent, that is. That's a violent one. Bloody hell. My bottle. Because his ball's in the tree. Wow. Yeah, a true book length feature. It really is. I'm going through that. Okay, so explained in the issue, True never believed Mr. Scully. We had many... Okay, so True the magazine never believed Mr. Scully, the author, the person who purported and put forward it at first. Not the con man, the other guy who wrote the book. We had many conversations with Mr. Scully about the matter before he began to write his book. When he offered material proof, we sent the correspondent, Khan, to his home in California to see it. This gentleman was less than awestruck by what he was shown. Finally convinced that Mr. Scully was talking nonsense, we offered him a flat $25,000 for proof of his story. We never heard from him again. In due course, his book appeared, and it was a bestseller. Khan's follow-up, 1956 article in True, Flying Saucers Swindles. Is this one available? It is. So this is Mr. Newton on the left, and this is Mr. Galba on the right. If that's not a conspiracy theory, I do not. That's proper X-Men. X-Men? He's the Beast! That's proper X-Files, isn't it? Look at that. I know it's probably just the way it's been scanned, but look at that. And is this going to be super long with weird comics in between? Oh, no, it's not as long. Interesting. Khan never blamed Scully personally for perpetrating the hoax. He always held the open possibility that Scully was an innocent victim of the hoax masterminded by Silas Newton. Based on my knowledge of the case, I think that Scully knew that what Newton and Gabar were saying was very, very dubious, but he knew enough about journalism and publishing to pretend to believe it. The following audio is a talk given by J.P. Khan. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to click on that. With Robert Schieffer. Who is this Robert Schieffer? I guess it's no one. It's just a man. Ah! Mr. Schieffer is this man who wrote it. It is himself. So that's Mr. Khan, and that's big. None of these, neither of these, even though they're in my I may have to doctor that at some point. I'm not going to. I don't care. Anyway, very interesting. Oh yes, and then it lives on. It talks about it and has a nice little picture. Look at this, city of AZTEC. So you've got the mile marker, small station pump, and the crash site parking. Good to know. This is the last one. Two critical UFO events in history. So one of them is the RB47 UFO incident from 1957, but we're not going to talk about that one. We're going to talk about the AZTEC UFO events, and specifically this picture. The AZTEC event at Hart Canyon near Aztec, New Mexico, is by far the more controversial of the two events. Good, yeah, that's why we're only going to talk about this one. The controversy rests with some problems involving witness testimony and the background of others who were involved in the original story by columnist Frank Scully. However, the story has remained in play by work of researchers William Steinman and Leonard Stringfield, and more recently has and more recently, has recently gained great traction by the hard work of researchers Scott and Susan Ramsey, as reported in their book, The Aztec Incident Recovery at Hart Canyon. So Hart seems to be spelt in lots of different ways. Scott and Susan Ramsey were the people who did the plinth. Very interesting. They love Aztec UFOs. The short synopsis of the event is that a saucer about 100 feet in diameter was discovered by oil workers sent to the Hart Canyon to extinguish a brush fire threatening oil wells in the area. Nearby was a strange craft resting on a mesa. The oil workers inspected the craft, which appeared to be made of a light but extremely strong metal without seams or fasteners of any kind. A small broken porthole was located, and the workers could see a number of small occupants that seemed to be burned or charred. More layers keep being added onto it, don't they? The military soon arrived and sealed the area. The men, along with the 2 police officers who had been summoned by the workers, were admonished by military personnel. What they saw was a matter of great national security and highly classified. They were told to never speak of the event to anyone, and there may have been threatened, as has been reported by a number of individuals witnessing UFO events from that time period. Again, going back to one of the main skeptics' theories is that these were classified, a lot of these things, whatever they were classified in some way, and the US government did not want information about them in any way getting out, and liked the idea that aliens were used to describe them because it's an easy out. This is a very complicated story with limited witnesses, most of which are now deceased. However, newly discovered evidence, along with a dedicated work of researchers Scott and Suzanne Ramsey over the last 10 years, have started to convert many who thought this event was a hoax. Again, the flip-flopped, the moving back into maybe it wasn't a hoax. So, just one of the images in a series of photographs, all kind of look the same. I've seen a few of these different photos, and I can't find any more other than this. If you have access to them, please send them to me. Or not, I do not care. I do care. I don't know why I said that. It's the hard exterior to a soft inner shell. So, just one of the images in a series of photographs that supposedly document the charred remains of a head and torso from the 1948 crash, which were claimed to be extraterrestrial. The photos were taken by a former naval photographer who was flown in to document the site. Images in the public domain via UFO evidence. I have tried to look for that and could not find it. So this is apparently the charred remains of a head, wireframe glasses, maybe, 2 conductor cable. I don't know why it's highlighting them. This is meant to be the head and then the torso. How they could possibly tell, maybe the other 15 or so other aliens were less charred, and you could tell that they were wearing 1890s clothes, but who knows? Oh yeah, detail of photo 1 highlighting terrestrial hardware. Very interesting. Whether this is actually of the time or not, again, very hard to see. Right. Let's end it on this is beautiful. Flying saucers and the mysterious little men. Very interesting, often overlooked period in ufology. Whether or not it is true, I'll leave you to be the judge. But as always, before we leave today, we're going to be doing Picture of the Week. And I have and will talk about this in more depth later. But we're going to be talking about or looking at some pictures of Göbekli Tepe. And I've had to change a few settings. I don't have Mr. Graham Hancock's lovely dulcet tones to talk us through this. But these are some pictures of Göbekli Tepe. See, I can't even say it. That's why I need him. I need him here next to me, sitting on my lap, talking to me about Göbekli Tepe. So these are some information. This is basically a very old, ancient civilization. We're still, as far as I know, not sure on its actual age, but could could be very, very old. Could have been one of the earliest civilizations. It's in Turkey. And these are some pictures. I'm not going to go over lots of information, but I wanted to show some pictures because we talk about it a couple of times, but I haven't shown any pictures. And the picture of okay, so here's an aerial view. Main excavation area, southeast hollow. Again, it's kind of boring, isn't it? Western central pillar and building D following excavations in 2010. Some very interesting, very big aerial view. Some very interesting monuments, some very interesting designs. Hopefully we'll be able to zoom in. This is 18 photographs, so you can see. Here we go. Some of the art. Billa 43, building D, displays low reliefs of different animals, insects, and an epiphallic human figure. Does that mean a human figure shaped like a penis? I believe it does. Again, stabilization works to keep the plimps up. What is this? Building E. Interesting. But yes, Mr. Hancock loves this because this is an indication that the timelines, or at least when it was first found, is the timelines were maybe not what the majority, what the actual consensus of the scientific academia discussed. Low reliefs of wild animals, reptiles, and birds covered in its entire south-facing broadside. Beautiful. I love it. And that's the end. A nice little taster for when we eventually talk about Göbekli Tepe, which may or may not be next week. New episodes every Saturday. Thank you very much for watching, and I shall see you next time.